Floyd Mayweather has officially retired. We don't know if this retirement's going to last because he's retired several times previously and made comebacks, as we all know. So we'll see how it goes. But Oscar De La Hoya fired a parting shot at Floyd Mayweather. We know that Oscar and Floyd don't like each other. And Oscar basically said, I'm paraphrasing, but Oscar basically said that the Mayweather era has been the worst era ever. And it's been boring. And he's glad that Mayweather's retiring so we can get back to serious boxing, exciting boxing again. Now, I think Oscar De La Hoya is talking some truth when he says that the Mayweather era has been boring, because it has been boring. It has been anticlimactic. But some people would say that a lot of Floyd's fights, or most of Floyd's fights, have been boring because he's simply too good. And the opponents can't force him to fight. They can't penetrate his defense or do anything with him. And that's true. If there were fighters with an offense that were able to penetrate Floyd's defense out there, then it would make automatically Floyd Mayweather fights more exciting. Other people would say, well, Floyd has avoided fighting those kind of guys who might potentially be able to penetrate his defense. So there are many arguments on the table. But I see it like this. Back in the days when Floyd was at super featherweight, lightweight, and even his brief stint at junior welterweight, Floyd was very entertaining. The Diego Corrales fight was an exceptional performance from Floyd and a very, very entertaining fight to watch. He closed the show. And that's ultimately what most boxing fans want to see. Most boxing fans, they don't want to see a guy just dominate. When you've got your opponent on the brink, when you've got him ready to go, most boxing fans want to see you close the show and finish him. That's just human beings. That's why the sport of boxing has been as popular as it is over the past couple centuries. Because a lot of human beings have some type of craving to see that type of violence. They do. Including me. I like knockouts. Including many people in boxing. Manny Stewart, whoever. Mike Tyson, Costamato. People love the knockouts. And Floyd was providing the knockouts. He was disarming his opponents, outboxing them, outthinking them, outmaneuvering them. And then when they were completely defenseless and helpless, he was taking them out, like he did with Corrales, like he did with Arturo Gatti. That was another very entertaining performance by Floyd, where he stood his ground in front of Gatti. I'm not saying Gatti was a great fighter. He certainly wasn't. Especially at the time when Floyd fought him, he definitely seen better days. But nonetheless, Floyd dealt with him in a very entertaining way. And he took him right out. Even against Ricky Hatton, although he did box fairly defensively, Hatton was hyper aggressive and Floyd was landing clean shots, and he eventually took Ricky Hatton out. So Floyd has had some entertaining performances. The issue with Floyd is that as he's got older and as he's moved up in weight, he's fighting bigger guys who can take his power more. He's also had more hand problems. And at the same time, he's looking at his Uncle Roger and his dad, who can barely string a sentence together between them. And he's thinking, you know what? I don't need to be getting hit like these guys. So I'm not going to put myself out there and give opponents opportunities to hit me, which they don't need. But then, as I said, when Floyd has a guy on the brink, when he's beating him virtually into submission, whereas Floyd back in the days used to finish the guys off, nowadays Floyd don't finish them off. Because I'm telling you, you go watch that Robert Guerrero fight, he could have stopped Guerrero. There was a point in that fight where Guerrero was looking sorry for himself. He was hurt. Floyd could have finished him, but he said he hurt his hand, so he backed off and let Guerrero survive. It was similar in the Miguel Cotto fight. So these days, Floyd's not closing the show, even when the opponent is clearly there for the taking. And boxing fans in general don't like that. And it's understandable. I have to criticize a lot of Mayweather fanboys who these days act as though knockouts are immoral. That it's immoral for us to want knockouts in a boxing match. This is what a lot of the warped Floyd Mayweather fans are basically saying these days, that it's immoral for us to want knockouts. It's unbelievable. They weren't saying that when Mayweather was knocking out Ricky Hatton. They weren't saying that when Mayweather was knocking out Arturo Gatti. They weren't saying that when Mayweather was knocking out Diego Corrales. They were cheering and jumping around like little cheerleaders when that was happening. So it's okay when Mayweather scores knockouts, but when he don't, and when people are saying his fights are boring because he's not getting knockouts, then they start criticizing fighters who go for knockouts. Oh, that fighter's stupid. He always goes for the knockout, putting himself in danger. I mean, it's ridiculous. That's how big of fanboys they really are. They're not fans of the sport. They're fans of Floyd. And that's the difference between people like me and many other boxing fans and Mayweather fanatics. They're not really fans of the sport. They're just fans of Floyd. And he can do no wrong in their eyes. But as I said, I'm being fair to Floyd. He has had hand trouble. He don't want to end up like his uncle and his dad, brain damaged and punch drunk. And that's cool. I understand that. I'm not criticizing Floyd for preserving his brutal hands and trying to preserve his faculties. So I can't blame him for that. But at the same time, I can't blame the fans for saying Floyd's fights are boring, because they are. It is what it is. Right? It's understandable the way he fights, but it's boring to watch. That's why the fans reward fighters who take risks, because it's more entertaining. And that's ultimately what boxing is. It's an entertainment, a spectator sport, and it's a form of entertainment. So the entertaining fighters, your Mike Tyson's, for example, that's why he's so highly revered even now, decades after his prime. Mike Tyson is still spoken about with so much passion and reverence by so many boxing fans because of the excitement that he brought. In terms of just boxing entertainment, Mike Tyson was one of the best things that ever happened to the sport. In terms of entertainment, you couldn't get much better than Tyson in terms of entertainment value. He was tremendous for the sport. And that Mike Tyson era was a very exciting era. This Floyd Mayweather era, we've seen a tremendous amount of skill. We've seen one of the best defensive wizards that we've come across in boxing for many years. But his fights have been surrounded by hype and have ultimately been anticlimaxes, at least during his welterweight career. At the lower weights, yeah, he was closing the show, putting on spectacular, coming out with spectacular knockout victories and whatnot, the kind of stuff the fans want to see. And he was doing it without getting hit. So it's not like he if he scores knockouts, that means he's going to be getting hit a lot. No, he hardly got touched at all in the Corrales fight. He hardly got touched in the Gatti fight. But yet he still got the knockout. So you can get the knockout without getting hit, people. This is a myth that if he gets the knockout, he's going to be getting hit himself. No, he was good enough defensively and offensively to stop himself getting hit and still get the knockout. And he could have done it against Guerrero, but like I say, he said he hurt his hand and whatever, didn't want to take the risks and what have you. So it's understandable the way Floyd fights in his own mind. I can appreciate it, but it's understandable that the fans are not going to find it entertaining at the end of the day. It is what it is. It's one of those type of situations. In terms of, and that's in terms of the actual fights that Floyd's been in. In terms of the hype surrounding Floyd, I would say it is the worst era that I've personally experienced. I've been a lifelong boxing fan, and the hype surrounding Floyd, the fanboyism surrounding Mayweather is definitely the worst I've experienced during my time in boxing. Apart from maybe Mike Tyson, because Tyson to this day has a tremendous amount of fanboys who follow him and just, but at least with Tyson, he was exciting. With Mayweather, he hasn't been exciting for years, but yet he's got this army of drone-like fanboys who follow him and praise everything he does. As far as they're concerned, this guy can walk on water. He could murder a child and they'd make an excuse for it. I'm telling you, that's how warped and deranged a lot of these Mayweather fans really are. So in terms of fanboyism, with the exception of maybe Tyson, I would say this is definitely the worst era, the Mayweather era. The fanboyism is terrible during the Mayweather era. It is terrible because, in previous eras, when you had people like James Toney, who was dominant at middleweight for a time and moved up to super middleweight, Roy Jones Jr. was extremely dominant for many, many years until he lost to Antonio Tarver. He was literally clowning most of his opponents, knocking them out, putting his hands behind his back. Then when they threw a punch, he would beat them to the punch and drop them. He was doing all kinds of crazy antics in the ring. He was incredibly dominant. But none of these fighters had anywhere near the levels of fanboyism, fanaticism, and delusional foolishness surrounding them that Floyd Mayweather does. So with Mayweather retiring, I'll definitely be glad to see the back of that. If indeed he sticks to this retirement, I'll definitely be glad to see the back of all the fanaticism. As far as his performances themselves, certainly during his time at welterweight, I think that a lot of his fights have actually hurt the sport of boxing because they're anticlimactic. Again, I have to reiterate, I understand his reasons for them being anticlimactic, but you have to also understand and appreciate the fact that the fans are not going to find it entertaining. Simple. And these fanboys who are always defending Floyd Mayweather's defensive boxing and acting as though everyone should love it. Just imagine if every boxer fought as defensively as Floyd Mayweather. Literally nobody or virtually nobody would watch the sport of boxing. The great thing about boxing is that we've got variety. You got some fighters that are movers, who are ambush fighters, like a David Haye or Amir Khan when he was under Freddie Roach. You got guys who are explosive volume punchers like Pacquiao in his prime. You got counter punchers like Marquez. You got defensive guys like Floyd and Hopkins, Rigondeaux. You got all-out attacking pressure fighters like Mike Tyson and Joe Frazier. These days, Gennady Golovkin. You got explosive southpaws like Adonis Stevenson. So there are so many styles, and when you get clashes of styles, this is when you get great fights a lot of the time. So these people out there acting as though Floyd Mayweather's style is the ultimate, it's the pinnacle, and it's the only thing we need in boxing. And anyone whose style is not like Floyd's is basically shit, because that's how a lot of these idiots behave these days. A lot of these Floyd fanatics. You guys basically are envisaging a world in which the sport of boxing is destroyed. Because if everyone fought like Floyd, if everyone fought that defensively, literally no one would make any money from boxing. No one would want to watch it. Simple as that. And I have to go back and reiterate this point as well. You get a lot of these Mayweather fans who basically say that if you don't find Floyd Mayweather entertaining, you're a casual fan. which is ridiculous. Because I'm about as far from a casual fan as you could possibly get. I'm a hardcore boxing guy, have been for most of my life. And I don't find watching Floyd entertaining at all. If you do, good for you. But don't expect everyone else to. And as I said, when Floyd was knocking people out back in the days, you weren't complaining. So don't start complaining now Floyd's not knocking people out and people are saying, oh, it's boring. Don't start complaining that people not finding it entertaining now and trying to defend defensive boxing and start acting as though you weren't jumping up and down like a little cheerleader when Floyd was knocking out Arturo Gatti and Hatton and Diego Corrales, because you were. So from an entertainment point of view, the criticism of Floyd Mayweather and his fights, the product at the end of the day, is extremely legitimate and it will be good. Even though Floyd has beat people like Miguel Cotto, Canelo Alvarez, and they're fighting later on in the year. Guys he's beat, guys he's better than. This is a perfect example of how boxing at the end of the day is entertainment. Floyd can beat those guys. He has beat those guys. But not in entertaining fashion. Certainly not the Canelo fight anyway. The Cotto fight was slightly more entertaining, but still, wasn't any great spectacle. But you put those two fighters together, then you're going to have real entertainment. And that's what the fans want. The fans, above all else, above skill, above anything else, the fans want entertainment. If you can provide skill, great defense, and entertain them by knocking them out, then that's perfect. And that's pretty much what Roy Jones Jr. had going on during his prime, especially when he was at middleweight, super middleweight. Them years, he was knocking people out. He was hardly getting hit, and he was extremely entertaining. That's what people want. Prince Nassim, when he had his run at featherweight for a time before he ended up losing to Barrera, the reason that he was so loved in the UK is because Nassim hardly got hit, apart from maybe the Kevin Kelly fight and the Alicia fight. Other than that, and maybe the Medina fight, for the most part, Nassim wasn't getting hit when he fought people like Steve Robinson, Tom Johnson, Wilfredo Vasquez. He wasn't getting hit in those fights. But he was hurting those guys and knocking them out. And that's why he was so loved in the UK. Even today, people still talk about the Prince Nassim era in British boxing as their favorite ever era because he was so exciting. And he didn't have to get hit in order to be exciting. As long as he was knocking people out and putting them on the canvas, people were happy. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on Mayweather's retirement. We do need more excitement back in the sport of boxing. We need these pay-per-views, which are not cheap. We need these pay-per-views to deliver. We need the final product to deliver in terms of excitement and compelling action. That's what we need. And if we're going to have another dominant fighter, a prolific champion, ruling over the sport, we would hope for someone that is more of a Mike Tyson or a Sugar Ray Robinson or a Sugar Ray Leonard. Someone that, yes, has skills. I mean, Tyson certainly had skills, but when it comes to Ray Leonard and Ray Robinson, they had skills and versatility, but yet they were entertaining as well. So that's what I hope for. I hope we can move into an era where even if we do have a monolithic figure in boxing, like Mayweather has been, this time he'll be someone entertaining, someone that's actually going to deliver for the fans and attract more people to the sport and inspire more people to take up the sport of boxing. So that's my thoughts on it, people. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'm out.